Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra.
And welcome again to another edition of the Bison Media Zone here on this Wednesday morning. We do it each and every Wednesday at 10:30, taking a look at everything going on around NDSU. Later on, we'll preview this weekend for Bison baseball and Bison softball. Conference play well underway. Bison baseball team back on the road. Softball with a huge weekend with South Dakota State. Heck, they're playing games in April in Fargo. That's reason enough to go nuts about that. But we are in the midst of spring football. We only have week and a half left before the Green and Gold Showcase coming up on April the 20th. You'll see it live right here on WDAY Extra to wrap up the spring for 2024. We've had a different coach come on throughout spring ball, and I'm super excited. He hasn't been on a hot mic either. He's been here forever, and I haven't had a chance to talk to him. So now it's pretty exciting to have offensive line coach Dan Larson join us here this morning. I was joking with him off air. Offensive line at North Dakota State is like quarterback everywhere else. So you've been doing this for a while. Tell me on the adjustment of taking over and coaching offensive line. What was the biggest, not necessarily challenge, or biggest thing you had to adjust to when you got the job?
Well, I think the biggest thing is I don't know anything. I mean, that was part of it, right? I made a joke. I was at a clinic last week, and I made a joke that I was, one of those offensive coordinators or head coaches in the past that, when something didn't go wrong with the O-line, it's like, come on, we just got to move it, right? We just got to get our pads underneath these guys and get going. I think it makes you appreciate every guy that I've worked with, coordinator, head coach, in terms of the job that they do. But it just, how technical everything is. And I think the appreciation part of it probably went to truly like how big of skilled athletes these guys are. The amount of things that we ask them to do to block, the amount of different types of bodies that we have them do on a defense right now. But I think it was just that was the exciting, that was the challenging part. At that time, talking with Coach Entz about the opportunity was, as I said, it's an area of football that I've always been really fascinated with. Yeah. I'm going to attack it and treat it like I'm a first-year GA and going after, a role that I really want.
How sharp was the learning curve as well, Dan, when especially you had COVID thrown in, that you can't really work with the guys as well?
Well, I joke, Jalen Sundell moved to center, and so he had 2 weeks to learn center. I was 2 weeks to learn how to coach offensive line, and it's like, let's go kick off and play against the Youngstown team. That was okay that year
pretty good.
From a defensive standpoint. Yeah. So obviously it helped having, Cordell around and a guy you could lean on a little bit and ask how things were done. And, even still talking with some of the veteran guys that were still in the area that might not have been out playing, you still lean on those guys and go into it without an ego. Excited to learn, excited for the opportunity to continue to get better as a coach, but watch those players hopefully get better too.
For where have you seen now your biggest, I would say, growth as a coach? If you were looking at, 2020 to where you're at now, what would you say your biggest adjustment has been?
I think just, you continue to get more comfortable in the technique aspect of it and never be satisfied with how you're teaching something. Is there a different way out there that can be done? It might have been the best thing never having coached it, because I don't have 20 years of this is the only way it can be done. So I think I went into it. How do we, at that time, how does Tyler want things to be blocked up front? We were trying to mesh a little bit of a couple different systems together. I'm good. Inside zone, gap scheme, pin pull. Sure, I think we can do this, right? And I didn't have probably enough experience in my background saying, well, that's too much technique or too much fundamentals. Well, how can I simplify the technique aspect of it to hopefully be able to roll it all together? So I think it's just more comfort level, confidence in terms of talking with it. But like these guys, NFL guys come back and they're sitting in there talking. I mean, I'm asking them, like, hey, what does your coach do? How do they do it? So you're just still trying to get better and not thinking you ever have any of the answers.
To be a head coach prior, and I know I asked you about this when you got here, how much does that help? That you've ran the show before, is that in your arsenal? How much does that help for you?
Well, when I went to O-line, it was 3 years ago, I walked into a situation that I thought I knew what the heck was going on. And then after the first day, roster management, official, or we were doing visits and all this stuff. Okay, here we go, kind of all over again. Yeah. I'm learning stuff on the fly, right? But I think it's just, that offensive line group, it's all such different personalities. And I think when you're a head coach, you're dealing with, guys from different parts of the country, your different backgrounds. And so I think just that comfort level, being able to connect with a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, I think, certainly paid off from that standpoint.
Well, you've got a lot of eyeballs on you this upcoming fall, as you well know, with 3 spots open. Describe what you have tried to do with spring ball. Is it open competition now, or are you just trying to find out who can we rely on to get ready for fall camp?
I think it's certainly a combination of both. I think the open competition part of it, which is the best part about spring ball, is actually watching guys go and battle for what they know are meaningful reps. I really appreciate, Coach Polisek's message that he's had when he's come here with our guys, and don't have a timeline mentality. Like, go for the job you want. Don't worry about trying to do it your third year, your second year, or fifth year, right? I mean, just if you want to be the starter, go work and become the starter. But I do think we're looking at in some situations, like, we've got some talented younger players. Can they go handle some critical third down situations? Yeah. And then probably more often than not, like, I'm charting and looking at just different line combinations that are out there at the same time. One of the big things is communication. And, two young players right next to each other, and they know what they're doing, but they don't want to talk over the other one. So do those guys need to have an upperclassman around them that are willing to help with that part of it a little bit more? So I think it's just trying to play around with that combination a little bit. And, you kind of have an idea, and then summertime we can continue to enhance on that, and then fall camp we got to go.
Tell me the reaction you had when you heard Grey Zabel was going to come back for another year.
Well, yeah, excited, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing from my standpoint was you just always feel better as a coach. I don't think it matters the position. Just when you've got one guy, and Mason Miller being out would be the other guy too, where they played a lot of football, and no matter what the moment or the situation calls for, they're not going to feel panic. And probably helps when you've got either first year, somewhere, somehow there's going to be guys that are going to be starting a game for the first time this upcoming season. You look across the huddle, or you look at the guy next to you, and he's been there, he's done that. He's not showing panic. He's showing confidence in the moment. To have two of those guys, but certainly then, obviously, Grey is a guy that we were challenged with in terms of, other opportunities, right? To have those guys come back, I think is huge. But I think it speaks a lot to who Grey is as a person. I think it speaks a lot to our football program. I think it speaks a lot to hopefully the connectivity we have between coaches and players. This is not a transactional place. It's a place where you can grow and you can transform and, have great relationships during and after.
If it's April 10th, so I'm going to hold you this to August 31st, but where would you put Grey Zabel right now for your opening game?
Somewhere in the starting five. How about that answer?
Boy, you were a head coach, man. You were definitely a head coach with that answer. That's perfect.
I think it would be one of the two tackle spots. I think it's just a matter of how the other four shake out. He's done almost exclusively all left tackle. There have been a couple of deals where he's jumped in at some right stuff as well too. But it would be at one of those two spots, and kind of how the other part of it shakes out. But he'll be somewhere in the starting five.
We have a graphic with the depth you have on offensive line. I want to hit on some of the younger guys that you can talk about, because we've talked about them, at least on this show, for a while, the recruiting aspect of a Bo Johnson, of a Jack Lewinsky. A Griffin Empey comes to mind as well that I know has gotten a lot of attention. Give us some of the lowdown on some of these guys, Dan, and who could really Trent Fraley, who just got here from Marshall, just their adjustment of potentially you're seeing them get on the field come August.
Well, I think all those guys you talked about are all guys that are a reason why, you're continuing to be optimistic and excited about what the future holds, even though you're losing, some really high caliber players, right. The three guys that we lost. I just, Bo Johnson's a kid that just has continued to get better. Coming from Spring Lake Park offense, Zach Johnson, it's down blocking, it's running. We saw the physicality, love the mentality. But now we got to start putting some of the finer tune aspects to it. Bo really solidified to me that he could play O-line here when going and watching him play basketball. Hard to move in the paint, quick feet, active feet, and now it's just trying to tie in some of the technique aspect with him a little bit more. Jack's got a lot of athletic flexibility. He can be a center, he can be a guard.
Okay.
It's just trying to figure out kind of like where is that comfort level, and quite honestly, he's got so much position flexibility inside those three that we might not know anything until, we start fall camp next year with him. The two guys that are quiet, that you just don't hear a ton about, Griffin Empey, Nate Schneckloff. I mean, those guys have just been getting better. They both have a mentality that is just, they want to be really good at football. They're willing to put the work at it. Nate can be coached super hard, responds the right way. And then, I mentioned to it before, but I've been really encouraged by Austin Schultz. I mean, just a local kid. Yep. is he a guard? Is he a tackle? We think there's some position flexibility with him. He wants to get better. He's done a really nice job with Coach Kramer and Coach Napoli in the weight room this offseason. You're excited about those freshmen just in terms of the opportunities that are going to be coming for them. But then that's also led to some ways of some guys like Devin Lockerby and Trent Fraley, a new kid, but seemed to really gravitate well to the room. Seemed to be able to have a really high football IQ, could handle some different things. And, it's just what combination of all those guys is going to work best together. But I'm super excited about the opportunities with all those guys, too.
And then on the flip side, Dan, you've got 2 6-year guys in Jake Rock and Hunter Poncius who have been around, but they haven't started a whole lot. Where is that fine line of getting them, okay, you've been here, now we need you to take that next step?
Yep. Well, and that's been the biggest challenge for both those guys. It's not about whether or not they can do it. Both of them have played in big moments. Jake started playoff games for us. Hunter was, played, 10, 15 snaps against South Dakota, if I remember correctly, or certainly it was around 10 snaps against South Dakota in the quarterfinals. So they both have played, right? But now it's that, can you do it for 4 quarters and for 70, 75 minutes? And the best part about both these guys is that they're still, here are the areas that we need you to work on and continue to get better at, continue to challenge you at. They don't back down from it. They still show up. They put the work in. A lot of times guys in their situation when they haven't started a lot are probably saying, I'm not coming back my 6th year.
Yeah.
Like I've done enough football. For those guys to, want to continue to give back to this program, want to continue to put the work and the effort in. I mean, 6 years in the weight room, 6 years with me, or certainly 5 years with me. I mean, that's a long time now. All right. I mean, it's a lot of meetings, but I give those 2 a lot of credit. They're going to be factors for us this year somehow, some way.
I got a couple questions on a pair of Jalen's that you coach. Let's first start with Sundell, who just went through pro day here. You were visiting, I know, with a couple of the coaches. He told me they're looking at center, which is ironic considering he never played center until he got here. What are you hearing NFL potential for him in a couple weeks with the draft?
Well, I think it's anywhere. I mean, I think it can be a very similar to what, Cordell went through. I mean, is it a middle round? Is it, priority free agent? I mean, it just takes the right team to fall in love with you. But I think organizations and they're really intrigued by his flexibility. I mean, Central Arkansas in COVID, I mean, he played 3 different spots.
Yeah.
And one of the spots wasn't even center. So I mean, he's got position flexibility. He's really smart, understands the game. I think people are really intrigued about that part of it. You can only dress X amount of linemen.
Right.
Have somebody like that's got position flexibility is huge. So I know they're excited. I'm excited for him. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He'll do well wherever he goes. He's been a pro for a long time. He just hasn't been in an NFL organization.
So earlier in the show, we had Jalen Bussey on it, and your first stint here was running backs coach. Give me your initial impression of seeing the bus out there, especially in his first game when he took 65 yards for a touchdown.
Boy, it looks pretty bad as the position coach when you're like, this guy's not playing for us a ton right now, right? He has some talented guys in front of him, but all of a sudden he rips off some of those. It's like I thought, we couldn't run the ball inside with them, right? I think that's what the first thing that Coach Ed said. One of the great personalities that we probably have had, and same thing. I think you're involved with this program. You get to see a lot of just really cool people. For that kid to have, gone through here without ever really having a big time role, but always had a role. And his most important role at times might have just been in the locker room and at practice and keeping things light, big of a competitor as he was. To always have a smile on his face and to be here, graduate. He was our program always got better by having him on the roster. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, what a great kid, but man, you can put a smile on your face. That's for sure.
Last question before we let you go. What do we not know about Wisconsin high school football that we should?
It's filled with a lot of athletes. I mean, everyone wants to recruit Texas and Florida, right? I don't know the last time there's some pretty good players over there as well too. We play in every environment, right? We still got schools there that got more grass than they got turf. Turf is still looked at as a luxury. Okay. So, I mean, the line painters are important, right? The guys that mow and grow the grass are important. We had an opportunity to go back and spend some time around the Wisconsin high school coaches last week. And a crazy part of my freshman year coach is now the head coach at Walden, Wisconsin, where I went. He's sitting in the front row. I had his His wife was my 6th grade math teacher.
Wow.
And I watched videos of his son hitting a wiffle ball over the house when he was 3 years old. Now his son's got 3 kids or whatever it is. So I said, I don't know if that makes you old or me old. They're one and the same, but great state. Obviously, really competitive football. But I think the one thing there is I'm not coaching right now if it's not for, Wade Lebecki and some of these guys that I had an opportunity to be around and made athletics really fun. Challenge you to be better, but made athletics really fun. And you won't hear me say a bad thing about the state or the football being played there.
This was great. I make sure we'll not wait 5 years to do this again, all right? I really appreciate the insight, and I'll see you up at practice next week, okay?
Sounds great, Don. Thank you.
There he goes. Dan Larson, NDSU offensive line coach, giving us the lowdown there on the Bison group heading into 2024. Some really intriguing characters and candidates. Eric, throw that graphic up again quick if you can before we go to break here. The weights and the size, some of these guys, Bo Johnson's a monster dude. He's huge. Spring Lake Park, Minnesota. He was the first commit for the class of 2023. You got him out there. You've got a guy like Griffin Empey, who was not really highly recruited. He's in the mix as well. Lewinsky's from Minnetonka. Devin Lockerbie is in his 3rd year. Another kid out of Minnesota that is starting to get some real run. He mentioned Nate Schneckloth, who's on there. Fraley, Poncius, Rock. It's just going to be really intriguing to see what they trot out there for the opener against Colorado. We'll break. We come back. We'll wrap things up in the BMZ. Get you ready for a busy spring weekend for baseball and softball. Back on the Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra right after this. Just a couple minutes left here on the Bison Media Zone. You look at the up-to-date standings in the Summit League in baseball. St. Thomas with a half-game lead on North Dakota State. There's a half game ahead of South Dakota State, then Omaha, and then Northern Colorado and Oral Roberts. Yes, they have a tie. UNC and ORU tied in their finale last Sunday. The Bison will play in Greeley this weekend for a big 3-game set. Remember, that series with St. Thomas got postponed. Not canceled, it was postponed. I'm not sure when they're going to try and make that up. Those are 3 big games looming out there, coming out here for the St. Thomas Tommies and NDSU in baseball. NDSU lost last night at Minnesota 11-3. They'll play again next week against the Gophers. Meanwhile, the Bison softball team, after a non-conference series last weekend in Vegas, they won 1 of 3 against the Running Rebels, is back home, and league champion South Dakota State is here this weekend. 2 games on Saturday and then a single game Sunday morning. You see the Jacks yet to lose at 8-0. The Bison 3-3. They got swept by Omaha and then swept St. Thomas so far. That's their conference play. And then after this here, they got a series with UND, then Kansas City, and then wrap up the series season at South Dakota. All 6 make the Summit League softball tournament. Baseball, it's the top 4. That's why it's going to be awfully interesting to see how the last 4 weeks of the spring season unfold for each of these teams, each of them being sparked by freshmen. You'll see a feature coming up on WDAY News tomorrow night on Jake Schaffner, Bison shortstop that's off to a tremendous start. He's leading the Summit League in hitting. You'll find out more about him coming up tomorrow night on WDAY News. So we'll see. The fact, again, like I mentioned earlier, that each of these teams are playing home games in April. Bison baseball did last weekend. Softball's already had 3 games. It's a huge deal in its own part. Again, a reminder, we're back with you next Wednesday leading up to the Green and Gold Showcase to wrap up NDSU spring football for 2024. That's next Saturday at 1 o'clock on WDAY Extra. Our thanks to Dan Larson for stopping by. We'll podcast this as we do each and every week as well on the BMZ. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week on the Bison Media Zone on WDAY Extra.